In order for me to operate well within this marriage, I need to constantly be growing. I need to constantly be learning. I need to constantly be refining my skills. You've got to be a fantastic communicator. You have to learn how to pull your weight, as a husband. She has to learn how to pull her weight as a wife, right? We have to learn how to specifically and strategically love that other person.
Well, I think anybody that's out there talking about fatherhood or a dad's edge or anything remotely important to men today is a really powerful message, and the value in that is so important to the next generation of fathers, of men, of boys growing up. I'm a father of two. I have two boys. So Carson and Braden are 16 and 13. They turn 17 and 14 in a month. So I'm in the zone where I'm at a little bit of I'm hitting the hard pavement where we're hitting the teenage years, and it's a fun thing. We'll talk about a little bit of that. I know you have three boys. Tell everybody just a little bit about your background and your family so that we can go into some of the cool conversations that surround being that best version of yourself and that dad that you talk about so often.
Yeah, man. So I actually don't have three. I have four.
Oh, sorry.
But that's all right. I have 17, 15, 9, and 7. And
Oh,
I mean, if I could actually just simplify this to the nth degree, it's really this. And I'm gonna give men a sigh of relief here of like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I'm also gonna give you a little dose of tough love. Okay. So think of anything that we're good at, right? So when I first started Dad Edge, I had just kind of give you some background. I got a 4-year degree in health management, sports medicine, and nutrition. So, basically human performance, right? And nutrition and wellness and all that good stuff, right? And so I knew that backwards, forwards, upside down, right? I was a personal trainer through college. That's what actually helped me pay for college. So I knew everything to help somebody else reach their performance and fitness goals, that kind of thing. I graduated from that degree and realized that I was not going to make any money at it. And I was $64,000 in college debt. So I got into medical device sales. And so I learned everything I possibly could about human interaction, communication, sales, problem solving, all those things, right? So I just immersed myself into that kind of training, and I was very good at my job. I was very good at sales. Well, then I got promoted, right? And I went into management, so I had to take a whole lot of leadership training. So then I got to really refine my leadership skills, and I loved managing and leading people. I've also have a background of 10 plus years in martial arts. I was pretty decent in that. Thank God I've never had to use it in a real life scenario at least past high school. But I was decent at it when I competed, in tournaments and meets and that kind of thing. But when it came to being a father and a husband, I wasn't so great at that. I was sort of like average, maybe even below average. Some things I absolutely sucked at, some things I was pretty okay at, but it was it was speckled with some good and some bad. So here's where I let men off the hook. When it comes to being a good father, good husband, it's just like anything else in life. It's whether we choose to immerse ourselves into learning and training, because it's a skill. I mean, a lot of us think that, oh, I'm a man and now I'm a father, so therefore all this should be natural. Oh my God, no, right? If you really think about it, like let's just take self-defense and martial arts, right? We have fight, flight, or freeze. That's just wired in our DNA, right? So we can fight, we can defend ourselves, right? And if we're in a situation, and we're going to go on raw instincts if we have to. It's whether or not we're going to be successful in defending ourselves. What have we learned to defend ourselves, right? And that's with anything in life. So with fatherhood and being a husband, if you're not where you want to be in those areas, well, that's really okay, because there isn't a whole lot of training ground. I mean, we have the training ground, but there's not a whole lot of training ground out there for men. And the other thing too is we have to sidestep and surrender our ego as well. That's one of the hardest things to do. Like we'll sign up for a business coach all day long to grow our business. We'll even sign up for a personal trainer. right? I mean, that's almost like a luxury thing. Like, holy crap, you have a personal trainer. What you have like made it, right? But when it comes to being a husband and father, it's like, ooh, I don't know if I want to sign up for that because then there's a problem, right? Well, there's a problem if you don't. So I want to share with men that if you're not where you want to be, society has really kind of set us up for like, well, you have to wing it and you have to do it alone and you have to figure it out. And if you fall on your face, you're a failure, you're weak, you're this or that. And the other thing too is don't tell anybody about that either, because then you're really weak and then everybody finds out. So that's where I'll tell men it's not your fault because this is the way society is just kind of set up. Here's where the tough love comes in though. There are resources out there now and you can be a better, you can actually create the marriage that you truly, truly want. You can actually become the man and father that you truly want to be by being able to communicate better with your kids, by being able to lead your kids better, by being more calm, by being more patient, all these different things. But you have to say yes to learning it. So I will tell you, if you're not where you want to be in those areas, it's not your fault, just society. It is your fault if you don't do anything about it. So that's where the
Yeah,
tough comes in.
that's great. It's a growth journey, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like any good relationship. You talk about it in your book, and I've seen several social media posts where you're talking about the journey of any relationship, and being a parent is also that journey. And each child has their own journey with you. Each kid needs something a little bit different. Each one is uniquely different. I love having two boys. When I was told in the ultrasound room, my wife and I were in there. I'll never forget the moment when they told me that I was going to have a son. I cheered so loud that the ultrasound tech of 35 years said she had never heard a father that excited over it being a boy. And it wasn't that I didn't want a daughter, of course. It was just that I really wanted the ability to have that moment with my son. I wanted to be able to do some of the things with them that I always wanted my dad to do, or whatever it may be. And it's just such a great journey of growth and relationship, and watching the changes and trajectory over the years has been valuable. And I couldn't agree more that there are resources and opportunities, and also that you mentioned your imperfection and mediocrity. I think everybody to some degree feels that when they're starting as well. I mean, it's the walking in and only seeing the negatives versus the positives, or the challenge. And it's such a journey. I can't tell you the joy you get in fatherhood, that you see them growing up and actually doing some of the things that you've talked about and that you've believed, or that you and your wife deal with. And what are some of the things that you focus on when you're teaching dads? If you're out there and you're guiding a father, and they wanted to start off life. My brother just found out that him and his wife, they got married this year. They're having their first baby. He's pumped. Like, he's absolutely pumped. But I know my brother, he's analytical. He's a deep thinker. He's thinking, I want to be a great dad. I want to be better than my father. I want to be better than my brother, which is me. Like, I want to be the best version. What's some of the best advice you provide that new dad who's thinking about starting off on the right foot?
So the best advice that I could possibly give you is this. So Scott, let me ask you, what kind of car do you drive?
I drive a Chevy Tahoe
Okay, cool. So how often do you get oil changes?
whenever it's needed.
Okay,
So
when is it needed?
I think it's 5,000 miles approximately.
Sure. Yeah, every 5,000 miles. Do you wait till the oil light comes on or the engine light comes on and, like it's 40,000 miles, I haven't gotten around to it yet, I'll get around to it. Maybe the engine will just tell me when it needs it, or do you
No,
do it proactively?
proactively,
Proactively. What about the dentist? Do you go to the dentist regularly?
always scheduled six
Always
months in
schedule.
advance.
Yeah, 6 months in advance, right? Here's the interesting thing about fatherhood and being a husband. Um, we, or like even our health, right? We wait till there's a freaking crisis before we do anything. But yet we don't do that in other areas of our life. We brush our teeth every single day to prevent cavities and our mouth looking like total crap, right? We go to the dentist every 6 months. Like one of the biggest health impacts to our entire body is actually in our mouth, right? So if you're keeping that clean, you're going to have better overall health, right? And the same thing with the engine in our cars. You have to get an oil change every 5,000 miles. You have to rotate your tires every 7,500 miles. If you're not doing these things, you're basically driving a vehicle around that isn't safe. And we're like, and here's the funny thing where it's like, well, I don't want to be a dad driving my car with my kids in the car and not be safe. But we'll do that with our mentality. We'll do that in our marriages. We'll do that in our relationships. We'll do that in our spirituality. We'll even do that in our physical bodies. So it's very, and here's the other thing too. The world has kind of set us up, or we view the world, or other people view the world as like, oh, you're proactive in these areas, but not in these. And that's acceptable. I will tell you, you've got to be proactive in every area. You cannot wait till you're 60 years old to suddenly be like, I think I'm going to save for retirement. Right? Just like I'm going to wait until my wife puts divorce papers on the lawyer's desk before I start to, be better about communication, or before she starts being better about communication. I'm going to wait until my kid wants absolutely nothing to do with me and has basically gone on to live his own life before I start to learn about how to have a better connection and communication with my kid. Ridiculous, right? So here's what I'll tell you. Proactivity is one of the most effective things you can possibly do. And I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why. So reason number one is this. When you are proactive, you're going to be more effective. I'll give you an example of this. So think of it like this. You own a home. You go to flip on the light, and all of a sudden, I'm sorry, you go to plug in the toaster, right, into an outlet. All of a sudden you see that thing spark, right, and pop, and you're like, ooh, that doesn't look good. I think I'll wait on that. Not a big deal, right? Just wait, it's fine. No, you get on the phone and you call the electrician. You're like, hey man, something's not right. I think the wiring's messed up in this plug. I need you to come out and take a look at it before my house burns down. Right? Now the house hasn't burned down. All you saw was a spark. But you're gonna take action. And you're very logical. You'd be like, oh, time to call the electrician. Versus your house just caught on fire. You're frantically trying to grab the photo albums and this and that and all these other things. And you're on the call with the fire department. Oh my God, please send the fire department right now. My whole house is going to burn down. Right? So here's the interesting thing. But we'll do that in our relationships. If you're proactive, you're calm. If you're calm, you can actually be more strategic. You can implement things better, and you can go about life in more this calm and more effective. Did I say more effective? More effective fashion, right? Versus, here's what I'll tell you. In my experience, is if you wait until the 11th hour, and let's just say your wife rolls over one day and says, I don't think I love you anymore. I think I want a separation. There have been breadcrumbs. I'm sorry. And if you haven't seen the breadcrumbs, what I'll tell you is you might want to check how aware you are of your surroundings. There's always going to be breadcrumbs of something on the horizon that's imminent. If you didn't pick up on those breadcrumbs, that's a serious problem. But if you try to suddenly salvage a marriage after your wife has told you, I don't think I love you anymore and I want a separation, well, now you're going to be on the phone with the fire department frantically trying to repair it, and it's not going to be good. In fact, even your approach to her is going to be more out of disparity and not out of confidence, right? It's not out of proactivity, right? It's easier to go to the dentist every 6 months than to go when you haven't been in 5 years and suddenly you need 4 root canals and you need a few teeth extracted and you're like, oh shit, this is horrible. So proactivity is key. We've been running Dad Edge Alliance, which is our mastermind community now, for 7 years. I freaking love it, man. When men like your brother, who are about ready to have their first kid, join our group and they're like, I'm about ready to become a father. I want to learn every single thing that I can possibly learn about how I'm going to be a better father, but also I'm very well aware that the dynamics in my marriage are going to change now. We are no longer just a married couple. Now we're parents, and I need to know how to navigate that. I applaud men when I see those guys on kickoff calls, and I'm like, dude, I'm jealous because I wish I would have had this, because I waited 6 long years till my oldest was 6, wasted those years, wasted that time. in, I would call it, in seasons of on the phone with the fire department, right? And that could have been avoided. So proactivity is absolutely key.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the discipline of that proactivity as well. I mean, everything you just went over is a disciplined approach, whether it's changing the oil,
Yeah.
whether it's going to the dentist. I did a home inspection on my home a decade after buying it, and most people never do another one. And I said, I want to do another. Why would we not do an inspection? Let's figure out everything that's wrong with it right now. So if there's anything that's coming up, we could be prepared for it. And so it is crazy how we don't do that when it comes to parenting or relationships. You talk a lot about connection with your wife, and I found this so relatable because when we had our second kid, I'll never forget. The first one was like such a breeze. Carson came, and I mean, he would cry in the middle of the night, and Adrian would lean over to me after she tried to put him down a couple times, and she'd say, I can't do it. And I would just in a stern voice say, Carson, lay down and go to sleep. Everything's fine. I wouldn't even get out of bed. He would literally go from screaming, crying to absolute like peace in like five. As long as he heard my voice, he went to sleep, and it was that easy. So we have our second one. It's going to be just that easy, right? It's super easy. And all of a sudden, we have the baby. I didn't do anything. I just stood there and watched my wife be the hero. But she had the baby, and I thought I was doing everything right by taking the oldest one away from her all the time. Right? I'm like, oh, I'll take Carson here, and we'll go here, and we're doing all the cool stuff. And Braden is not as easygoing of a child. He screams louder when dad says what he said the first time. And so it's a different challenge. And to the connection point, about 6 months in, we went on a vacation, and we went to the Caribbean, and we're on this like I want to say it's heading to Tortola or something. We're getting ready to go on like a British Virgin Island catamaran cruise. And my wife looks at me and she goes, this is our ROM weekend. And I was like, I love the way that sounds. I don't know what it means, but it sounds like it's going to be a good week. And she said, it's to rekindle our marriage. Like, this is a time that we're separated. We need to make sure we're refocusing on everything. And it was just that separation became a theme in our marriage. Like, every single time we didn't have those breaks, whether it be weekly moments. You talk about pillow talk, and I want you to tell everybody about that. But for us, it was the ROM weekend or weeks became, even when we couldn't do a week, it was a weekend or a night. It was like, hey, we've hit a wall. We got to take a separation, get on the same page, and come back to this together. Because at the end of the day, if you want to be a great dad, what you just said is that you have to take care of yourself, just like you have to take care of the car that totes them around. And if you're not doing that, you're probably impeding the best version of yourself from helping them. And so
Yeah.
anyway, the connection is so crucial. Tell everybody a little bit about your connection and how you and your wife do that. And maybe any other thoughts you have on that um, discussion I just brought up.
Yeah, you mentioned pillow talk. Oh my God, dude. So like you're referring to the book The Dad Edge, which is going to be 8 years old this year. And the funny thing is I look at that book and I just kind of like smile and scratch my head and shake my head a little bit. The book still sells like, you know, uh, a lot of copies per month. And it blows my mind because I think it's a decent basic book, but it's kindergarten compared to what we do now. And I'm about ready to release a book this year. It's called The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood, and it's broken up into 4 parts. And one of the parts is creating what we call an extraordinary marriage, creating a legendary marriage. And I actually wrote that book last year. It was supposed to be launched back in September of 2022, but the publishing company that I inked a contract with went bankrupt. And
Good times.
I found that out 6 weeks before we were supposed to launch. Thank God I found out before that. And the publisher basically said, hey, I can either sign the rights back over to your book or I can help you self-publish. I was like, just give me the book back. And so now we're shopping the big publishers. So, but I say that because a lot has evolved and changed since the book, The Dad Edge. There's a lot more in depth and in the trenches. But let me first start out with just some statistics, just a level set. Everyone knows that in the United States, the divorce rate is 50 to 51%, give or take right now. What a lot of people don't know are the statistics of the marriages that stay together. This is scary. So the 50% that stay together are actually divided up into three camps pretty darn equally. I don't know like how equally, but pretty darn close. So 33%, just take it for one third, one third, one third. One third of couples that stay married and stay together can actually identify their relationship as working. Like, hey, this is great. I love it. My wife and I are in that camp. I love it. You know, I wouldn't really change much. We're communicating, our intimacy is on point, our sex life is on point, our parenting is on point. Everything is feeling pretty darn good, right? And I'm not going anywhere. Love this woman, love this man, period. The second camp, the next one third is like, it's okay. You know, it's like, it's not everything I thought it would be. I don't really want to go anywhere. I love her. She loves me. I think, you know, we talk more high level managerial things. Maybe our physical relationship isn't the best, but it's okay. Like we're kind of buddies, right? And we hang out. Then the last camp is complete and total disconnect. They're living totally different lives, individual lives. Usually there's quote unquote extracurricular activities happening. And they're just waiting for the kids to move out before they get divorced. And the top two reasons that couple doesn't get divorced is either financially it'd be too devastating, or the one that I kind of laugh at now is we got to stay together for the kids. That's great. Give your kids a front row seat to a dysfunctional relationship. That's exactly what every kid needs, right? So, the first camp, there's common denominators in that first camp. The common denominators are this, and this is what they've studied. John Gottman has even studied this, is that couples that are successful understand that there's more to it than love. That's a foundational element, but they also know, like, in order for me to operate well within this marriage, I need to constantly be growing. I need to constantly learning. I need to constantly be refining my skills. You know, you've got to be a fantastic communicator. And in order to be a fantastic communicator, you got to learn how to be a better communicator. You have to learn how to pull your weight, you know, as a husband. She has to learn how to pull her weight as a wife, right? We have to learn how to specifically and strategically love that other person. What a lot of us do is we love the other person in the way we need to feel loved, right? So if you're a guy that loves physical touch and compliments, it's probably how you're going to love on your wife by default. Well, what if that's not how she receives love? What if she receives love by acts of service and quality time with you, undistracted quality time? But you don't know that. And it usually shows up in like, she just doesn't understand me. He just doesn't get me, right? We just don't feel connected. So people that stay in love, people that are connected are growing together, learning new skills together, and they're constantly sharpening, and they know it's going to be work, but they're overall they're fulfilled. So as it relates to Jessica and I, right? I know very specifically how to love Jessica, and it's not how I receive love. We actually are just fresh off of the she and I took the love language test, retook it just 2 nights ago. And
A
so did
retake. A
a
retake. How many
retake.
years has it been?
Gosh, man, probably 7
Okay.
at the
Just
least.
curious.
Yeah. And mine have kind of tweaked a little bit, and so have hers. But I will tell you, physical touch is 40% of how I receive love. For Jessica, it's 7. 7, right? So like all this touchy feely stuff that I like, hug me, kiss me, you know, like let's have sex, right? That's 7%. Now I will tell you, like our sex life is extremely healthy. Like we have sex a lot. However, it's because I know how to love that woman in her love languages, which is acts of service, quality time, right? And very specific ones. So I'll tell you that in order for you to be successful in your marriage, number one, you have to know how the other person receives love. You also have to be very clear and communicate, how do you receive love, right? So Jessica knows how to turn my dials and I know how to turn hers, which is great. The other thing too is I think it's really important to have a shared vision that's based around your core values as a married couple. What is the vision of your marriage? Not what happens while we're married, because a lot of people are, you know, management by crisis, and we manage things as they come in. But what is the vision that you're chasing as a married couple that is intertwined into your core values? So that's another one. I'll share a couple things with you that I think are most meaningful to Jessica and I. Jessica and I went through an exercise that we take all of our mastermind guys through, and that's called defining your core values. And a lot of people are like, well, what's core values? It's actually 150 different core values. And every human being on the planet operates within 5 to 7 core values. Now, a couple different core values are like community, service, environment, connection. These types of things are core values, right? Vitality is one as well. So this is how core values usually show up for people, though. Core values are under the surface. It's more intuitional intelligence. It more shows up as, I don't know what it is about this, but it doesn't feel right. Or I don't know what it is about this, but it feels really good to me. That's how core values really emerge, unless you go through an exercise like what we do in the Dad Edge, which is defining your core values, which you actually go through an exercise and you learn them. So what Jessica and I do, and we encourage our guys to do this as well, is go through that process individually, identify your 5 to 7 core values as an individual, and then come together as a married couple and compare your 5 to 7 core values as an individual and be like, hey, how do we merge these together and what are most meaningful? Jessica and I have gone through this. So the interesting thing about our relationship and our individual core values is 4 out of 7 of them were pretty much aligned. So we're like, wow, well, gosh, no wonder we kind of work pretty well together from just an underlying operational standpoint. But, like one of the shared values in our relationship is experiences over stuff. So we don't accumulate nice cars. We don't accumulate designer clothes. We spend our time, our resources, our energy on experiences and adventure as a family. Right. And that's a shared vision for our relationship. A lot of couples have they don't even know that might be something that they do. That's just one element of several. I won't get into really much more, but when it comes to that, but if once you have a shared vision for your marriage and a way you operate, does that raise intimacy? Oh my gosh, does it ever? Right. Because you feel insanely aligned. One other aspect is your shared vision for parenting. One of the top 5 fights that married couples have is parenting. And I think a lot of it could be avoided if you simply sit down and really understand, what is the vision for us as parents? What are we trying to accomplish and achieve here? Versus, we're 2 different people operating off 2 different past experiences of how we were raised. And a lot of times what people do is they make 2 different choices when they're a parent. I'm either going to repeat the things that were done to me when I was being raised, or I'm not going to do them. Right. And that's kind of the filter we run parenting through. It's really, really important, though, really important for you to sit down with your wife and to say, what are the things we want to do? What are most meaningful? And what are the bear traps that we don't want to repeat? And to make sure that you're operating within that alignment. I'll give you one quick example and then we can move on. One of the things that Jessica and I have always agreed on, and this is something that I think a lot of marriages fall in a pitfall of, is we will never disagree with the other person as it relates to a parenting decision in front of the kids. So if Jessica lays down, a disciplinary action, puts a kid in timeout because they did X, Y, and Z, and if I don't agree with it, our agreement is I don't call her out on that. And she doesn't call it out on me. I can't even tell you how many times I made a parenting decision. And I looked over at her and I could tell she was like, not so sure I'm on board with that one. But our agreement is I got your back no matter what. And if I disagree with you, I'm going to tell you in private, away from the kids, because the kids will sense that divide and they will use that, right? Not intentionally or maliciously. They're just kids, but that's how they will use it. So, if I lay down a disciplinary action, she doesn't agree, she'll back me and be like, that's what dad said, and I'm on board. So go do that or not do that or whatever. And then in private, she'll be like, hey, you laid down that thing, you made that decision. I really wasn't on board with that. And here's why, and I want to talk about that. So like, just in the future, if this comes up again, maybe we should think differently about it, and vice versa. So that's just one of several, but you got to be on board with that one too.
Yeah, there's so many good nuggets in there. We covered a multitude of things. Number 1, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, which is
Yep.
an absolute classic. And what's funny is before we went on that first ROM weekend or week to the Caribbean that we went on, we played that on the way on CD. This is how long ago it was. I bought it on CD because when we bought our first house, The couple we bought it from, they were remarried, and they handed us the book and they said, "We want to give you this book. It's literally made our lives so much better. It changed our marriage, and we wish we would have had it for our first marriage because we probably wouldn't have been divorced, but today it's helped us." And we put that in the drawer next to the bed. We never opened it up. And then, a couple months in with the less easy baby, the second one, and the challenge, I pulled the book out. I started reading the book, and then I knew that I needed to play it on CD. And we drove to a wedding. The baby cried the entire time in the back. It was up about 3 or 4 hour drive, and we listened to that book, and it was helping to establish, that shocking physical touch is really important to most men, but especially some men. So I still to this day, like, put my arm around my sister and like grab her, squeeze her neck, and like do things. And she's like, "I hate that, Scott. Why do you do this to me every time?" And I'm just doing it because it's how I show love. It's how my dad often showed me love. And so my oldest son, by the way, is absolutely the same way. Like, anytime he needs to feel loved, we just have to wrestle. I got to go up. I got to mess with him a little bit. We got to, get on the ground and go at it. And he feels full. My youngest son, man, I touch him and he's like, all right, Dad, I'm good, man. I'm good. But he loves that quality time, and he actually loves gifts, which is like one of the biggest challenges when you in any type of relationship. But the point I was going to get at is I love the point of just getting on the same page. And I love that that's a crucial point. I also love identifying the values. See, when you're getting your core values aligned, that's so important. I always felt blessed and lucky that my wife and I kind of grew up in similar backgrounds. Both of us had parents that are still together, and they bicker and they do what everybody does as they age. And nobody's perfect, but what a great example in a life that we had, where we both had our parents that still love each other to this day, that are both alive. And that example has helped us have a core family. And we kind of grew up, and as we grew together. And that's something that's been very valuable. And it's the core values that I think are very similar. And last, you mentioned the old book. Anybody that's written a book absolutely cannot wait to write the next one, because by the time it comes out, it's old. Your next one will come out and you'll be like, "Oh my gosh, it's so old already." And the whole point is that when you're on a growth journey in life, and you've said this is the key to the success, right? You're so far past 8 years. It's my favorite to go back and read, though, because I feel like the first book is the therapy one. That's where I learned why, based on this discussion, you did not have much of a father figure in any capacity growing up. Your goal to bring this to the world was not only for the world to be better, but for you to be the best version of yourself, and to take the positive examples you got from Joe and the limited examples you got from your dad, and implement them into your life. And I found that to be fascinating. So I'm grateful the book's still circulating. I enjoyed reading through it. It was, it's a basic version, but what a powerful version to help people understand who you are, so that how you change them and what impact you make in their life is so valuable. That's what I got out of that. And I loved hearing about that. So thank you for the journey.
Oh, thank you for that, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, that first book it was really just kind of getting out the bare basic bones, because at that point in time, I had been doing the Good Dad Project, which is now the Dad Edge. Not much has changed except for the name. But it was really just, what were some, because the Dad Edge, when I first founded it back in 2012, it hasn't changed as far as like what it is. It is a learning platform. It's a movement for men to learn these things. And I remember when I wrote the Dad Edge, I was like, what are the simplest and most effective things that I've learned to date in the past 3 years? And it literally just boiled down to, as I was writing that book, I was like, my God, these are way easier than what we as men make it out to be. Like, it's actually a lot easier. One of the problems is we try to overcomplicate it. or we try to actually add to versus I don't really need to do this or that anymore. Right. It's actually just a small little tweak. I, I, I actually, so I'm very active on Instagram. We have almost 100,000 followers right now. And I put a video on that went viral. It's got almost 3 million views, and this was 3 weeks ago. And I never expected this small little 60-second reel to go viral, but it did. And it's really it said, hey, kids come home from school, and what most parents do is they ask the one most popular question, which is, how was your day? And I
Good,
mentioned, and
good, fine,
good,
good.
fine, busy, and here's what I'll tell you. That clip was taken from a podcast that I was on right at the beginning of February this year. And I was very fiery that day. And I'll tell you why. I was very fiery that day. I was very kind of in your face on that podcast. And it's because my best friend in the world and also one of my business partners in the Dad Edge tragically lost his 19-year-old daughter the night before in a car accident. And there was no part of me that wanted to even be on podcast that day. Seeing your best friend and business partner go through something so tragic. And by the way, we're also dads running a dad platform, and you lose your kid. Oh my God. Like I've never seen anybody in my life in more pain. So I don't know, maybe it was a blessing in disguise, but I was very fiery that next day. And I basically said, that question is the shittiest question on the planet. Now that's an extreme, right? There are way worse questions. But what I will tell you is that there are better questions, and you can take the simplest thing or the thing that we default to and just literally tweak it. Just tweak it. Most professional golfers will tell you, if I move my swing 2 centimeters, it's going to make its difference in yards, whether I go right, left, or further or whatever. It takes centimeters. Same thing with our questions and interactions. So I said, instead of how was your day, what's been the best part of your day? What was something, or I'll reword that question literally probably 25 different ways. Like I'll say, what was the best part of your day? What's something that made you laugh today?
Yeah, the
What was
funny one is always good. The funny
yeah,
one
the
gets
funny
them
one,
every
right?
time because they can think, boys especially.
Right. So here's the thing. What I'm doing with that question is I want to guide my son, and that's just one of 3 questions I ask. I want to guide my son into something that he's proud of. Now, my son might have had the crappiest day on the planet, and we'll get to that question too, right? Of what was most challenging, because that's the second question. But what I want to do is I want to do several different things with that one question, and that one of the things that question does is it connects us. That's really what I want out of the question anyway. Is I want connection. It's not necessarily like when parents ask, "How was your day?" That's what we want. We want connection. Like, hey, tell me about your day. I would love to hear about your day. Please tell me about your day. I want to let me in on your life. Right. But that question doesn't allow that. That question gives you a crappy default answer of good, fine, busy, crazy, boring. Right. But when you guide somebody to a high point moment, something that they are proud of, something that was funny, something that raises the energy, a lot of different things happen. Number one, connection. Number 2, think of how great it feels when you get to share something positive or something that you're proud of or a win that you had with somebody you care about. You're excited, which is connection, right? And then the other thing it does too is it guides that other person no matter how crappy their day was. And I'm not saying sunshine, unicorn, and rainbows every day, but you can always find the diamond in the coal. No matter how bad the day was, what was something that was good that happened? Because you can train the brain to go into gratitude. That's an incredible skill. So that question does a lot of different things. So the reason I share that with you is because the simplest things that we do, it does not have to be reinvent and overhaul everything that we do. It can be a slight tweak. And I would say, I think last time I checked, we had 1,700 comments on that video. 90% of them were like, oh my gosh, I never thought of this. Or parents were chiming in, this is a great idea. I just used it. And it turned into a 15-minute discussion. I can't believe that one question. And then you have some haters out there. They're like, like I had one guy be like, this dude just thinks he just invented like something really, something no one ever heard of. He's such a dumbass, right? And I'm like, no, I never said that. Or I get these parents too. Like, are you saying I'm a shitty parent? I'm not a shitty parent. I'm like, I never said you're a shitty parent. I said the question was shitty, right? It's just like all these extremes that, like, if it's not something totally different or profound, we're like, I don't know if that's really useful. The most simplest things, the most simplest tweaks can be the most effective.
Yeah, you're so close. You're so close most of the time to the better version by just making those little simple tweaks. And
Yes.
the reason you were raw is that when we get down to that emotional level where we are absolutely empty for our friend or anything, that authenticity, that core, there's still something when you're doing a video, when you're doing a reel, when you're doing a podcast, there's still a little bit of you're I don't want to say you're performing. Everybody has a level that they're not going down to, but sometimes you're just like, screw it. This is bullshit. And I'm just going to say this because I'm
Yeah.
sick of it. And that's when that's when you get the best result. And the truth is, the other thing with connection, I find that tends to work is a simple recipe. And that is when you talk about something people actually like. You know, how dumb is that? My oldest son loves talking to me about sports. He loves talking to me about FanDuel and like what the lines are and like funny things that I'm not into, but like we talk about it. And he's like, could you believe that this was this and UConn was this? And but I can ask him one question about that and I get a ton. We talk about soccer, that my boys are embedded in soccer. My youngest son will tell me every single drill. Guys, I am not an analytical, like, I don't like getting in the weeds like that. I'm a big picture visionary. He starts going into, we put 4 cones out, Dad, and each of the 4 cones were approximately like 6 feet apart. And I'm literally ready to jump out of a window when he starts it. But I tell myself, this is connection. This is what he loves to talk about. And all you're doing is finding ways, no different than your spouse, no different than your friends, no different than on a podcast where you find similarities that we can agree on and talk about. And I love the simplicity. I also love the raw version and I love the frustration because, you know, sometimes it is that simple. Something that I think is interesting for dads and you know, I talk about this and think about it a lot. 20 years ago, prior to becoming a father, right? Very, very close to becoming a dad in the next couple of years, the dad's role was completely
Oh
different.
yeah. Totally
Like
different.
it was so I almost felt completely like blindsided when I became a dad. I will never forget like waking up in the morning, getting ready for work, and my wife saying, "Hey, you got to feed the baby every morning now." And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, what? What do you, I mean, genuinely, I'm just being as honest as I could be. I remember going, what are you talking about? This is this, my dad didn't change diapers. My dad didn't feed me. My dad didn't literally, my dad didn't even take a day off from work when we were sick. We would sit under our mom's desk at her law office. She's a paralegal. And we would sit under her desk at like 7 years old and work while my dad, who had like tons of days that he could take off, didn't do it. Now, it wasn't because he was a bad guy. It was because he came from a father who wasn't present, and being loyal to showing up to work every day was very powerful for my dad. But I look back and I remember going, hey, this game changed. And the number one story, and I'll pause after this, is I drove my oldest son to the babysitters the first day. And I will never forget this feeling. I will never forget. I remember going, I got it. I told my wife, I got it. Stop. You're worrying about everything. It's ridiculous. Relax. He's fine. I got in the car. I strapped him in. I put him in the car seat. The babysitter was literally like a mile and a half away. We had met them through my sister, who they were great people, phenomenal people. I drove into that court, got ready to pull in the driveway, and I turned around. And I turned around. I drove through the court and did about 8 circles. My eyes were welling up. I'm not a very I don't cry often. I'm not like super sappy, but man, I couldn't think of anything but how I was going to hand my child off to someone who now I couldn't protect. And it was a feeling that I remember saying, hey, this is a turning point. This is something that connects me to my children in a little different way than dads of the past. And it was the thing where I was coaching my kids in every sport, and I was on the field, and I was more invested. And because we're more invested, we will have better relationships with our children into the future. They might go through stages through the teenage years where you don't know as much as you want them to, or as you want them to think you do. Um, but the point is that those pinnacle moments were changing points. And so, to your point, that dads are so close, people are so close because that simple information. Sometimes it's just new. And because it's new, it's mind boggling because you hadn't put yourself in that position where you actually thought that was your role, or that was something that was going to provide value in your life.
Agreed, man. You could not have said any of that any better.
Well, I'm great. It was real. I mean,
Yeah.
I cannot, to this day, it's funny. My niece has a son. She had a teenage pregnancy, and my sister's a single mom. She busts her butt and has done an amazing job with her two daughters. And my niece had a mishap. She had the baby. The baby's the greatest part of our extended family now. It's been an amazing part. And but a single mom, I every weekend I'm like begging her. I'm like, hey, he needs some man time. I call it man time, and I just joke about it constantly. And so now I've got him saying, he's almost 3. He's like, man time, Uncle Scott, man time. And what I'm really getting at is that time separated away from mom, that special thing that only a father can provide. Like, just something a little bit different. He's got a dad, he's got great grandparents, but having those positive figures in your life. I mean, I read again, just listening to your description of when Joe came into your life and how powerful that was to you, that you were searching for this. I just find that to be, it's almost like the secret I didn't know about. When I was starting off as a dad, I didn't realize how powerful it would be and how much my identity was tied to being that best version. And if you took everything away, business, success, I don't care what it is, that's all I cared about. To this day, that's all I care about. That core family is the most important thing in my life. Who I love is the most important thing in my life. And so it's easy to talk about, but I think it's new to people, and that's a challenge.
I agree. I mean, you mentioned Joe, who came in my life when I was 4. And at the time he jumped into my life, I thought that's how dads actually came to be. I didn't know that they were around the whole time. My mom and biological father got divorced when I was very young, 9 months old, I think, and then no recollection of him whatsoever. But here's I think a big message for people out there, and this is not new information. Anybody can be a father, but it takes a special man to be a dad, right? You can be physically present every single night with your kids and completely absent at the literally at the exact same time. Just because you're there. Like, there's a meme that goes around. It's got I can't remember the guy's name, but he played Al Bundy on Married with Children.
Yeah. Ed
And
O'Neill.
Ed O'Neill, yeah.
I love it. I love Al Bundy. He's
Yeah,
hilarious.
he is. But here's what I'll tell you, that I think he's got a thing that says, the most being a father, 90% of being a successful father is simply showing up. I would argue that. There's a lot of detail in that statement that's missing. Or I'm sorry, 90% of being a successful father is just simply being there. Yeah, to some degree, but you can also fall flat on your face and do a lot of damage if you're there. It's what you do with that time that you're there, right? It's like, that is where the difference is made. And that's the biggest difference for men. A lot of guys will justify, be like, well, I'm home every night. Well, that's great. But are you there? Like, are you physically, mentally, emotionally there? Or are you vegging out watching Netflix? Or
Right.
are you smoking weed? Are you drinking? Like, not to say that those things are bad, but is it the best version of who you are, right? And you know, I'm not saying like having a couple beers at night is a bad thing. But what I am saying is that if it interferes with what you're trying to accomplish, it might be something to rethink. right now, so we host a live event every single year called the Dad Edge Summit. For any of your listeners who might be interested in that, this is our 5th one. You can find that at thedadedge.com/summit 2023. It's going to be in October of this year. And last year at the event, I stood up in front of 250 men and I said, "Hey guys, I'm going to do something this year that scares me, and I welcome, not scares me, but like something I thought was a big thing, you know. I didn't want to do it by myself because I know that if I tried to do something that felt really big and would challenge me, I don't go at it alone. You have to have accountability." I said, "I'm going to go 365 days without drinking alcohol." Not that I'm a big drinker. I'm kind of more like 2 nights a week. One of those nights is usually just if I'm on a date night with my wife. The other night, a couple drinks, whatever. But I'm like, it's really doesn't serve me. And I just want to do something that I think is hard. Like, I just want to see if I can do it. And 21 men stood up. "We'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it." So I'm in an accountability group, and I have been for 166 days, where all of us except for one guy has dropped out. Just one guy. So we've actually retained everybody except for one guy, and that's how strong accountability can be. But here's what I'll tell you: in the absence of alcohol, I have been awoken to things that I didn't see before, or even things that my kids see now. Like for instance, we have I have a neighbor, his daughter's turning 16 and they're having a birthday party for her. Now all my boys are going to be there. And this is, I don't even know how many times to date now where my kids have seen me in a social setting and I'm like the only guy not drinking. And I freaking love that, man. Like, because my kids will see me with like a Zevia, like I drink like a club soda, like a flavored club soda or something like that. Everybody else is getting, throwing them back. And even my 9-year-old has told me, "Dad, it's cool you don't drink alcohol." And in this like 9-year-old way. I'm like, "Thanks, man." So like just things like that, you know, your kids are watching, whether they say it out loud or not, number one. But number two, being like 100% of sober mind of anything allows me to see the world through a different lens that I otherwise maybe wouldn't have. Or like, so for instance, we'll be to get together like that, and I'll see people like, I'll give you a perfect example. We had, and I'm not going to name any names or anything like that. We had a quote unquote kind of friend, sort of acquaintance come over. She came over. She had her daughters with her. She was just obliterated out of her mind. And I could tell her daughters just want to go home. They want to know. They were just like, they knew kind of what was going on. They were still younger, but they were just like, "I want to leave. I don't like seeing my mom like this, and I just don't want to be here." And they're just beside themselves. She could not see that because she was in her own fun and her own world. And I was watching this unfold, and I was like, my heart just freaking ached for these girls, man. So like, it's just different things, when you become, when you're, to wrap all this up, you can be a parent, you can be a father, you can be a mother, but like how in it are you? Are you 100% in, 50% in?
I think you're talking about one of the most important traits anyone can have, and that's self-awareness. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to be self-aware to understand what makes us stronger, what makes us weaker. What makes us the better version of ourselves. And if there's something like alcohol that makes you a lesser version of yourself, it's something we should be aware of. And the self-awareness in everything that we're doing as parents is powerful. I gave up drinking for Lent, so I Easter Sunday I'll break the fast, but the bottom line is I hadn't done it in a while, and my 13-year-old gives up something big every single year, like super
Nice.
hard. And this year, and like desserts, and we have big Italian dinners and desserts and all kinds of stuff. And my son just gives it up. He's hyper disciplined. He's also the kid that'll shame you. Like, we've never been big drinkers, but let me tell you, he knows every drink we put in our body. He counts, like if a friend comes over and they have beers, He counts how many beers they had. He's been doing that for probably 7, 8 years. What that tells you, like, he'd be 5 years old and he'd be like, so and so had 9 beers yesterday, Dad. Can you believe that? If you don't think they're watching and paying attention, they are, and we're building that. One of the all-time self-aware things that I've noticed myself doing over the last decade or more is I put my wife does not like that I put my shoes in the kitchen, like by the refrigerator. And I've been doing it since we moved into this house. I take them off, I put them right there. It's in the same spot all the time. I probably, now it's accepted. There's actually a little thing there to hold the shoes. Like we've given in. But here's the interesting dynamic. Throughout my children's life, I've noticed that I put my shoes there. Guess who else puts their shoes there? Both of my boys.
Yep.
And guess what I notice every time I look at their shoes? Every so often I look down and I notice the shoes are bigger and they're bigger and they're bigger. And now my oldest son will be 17 in a month, and the shoes, I got chills. I have chills because it's something that makes me self-aware all the time. And it really hits me. His shoe, he's a 12. He's a size 12. His shoe is bigger than mine now.
It's crazy, isn't it?
He's outgrown me, as we all want for our children in some ways. And I hope that my boys are better than me in a lot of those ways. That's a goal for all of us as parents. And the self-awareness of when the point of the Lent conversations, when I asked my son, my youngest, what I should give up, he said without a doubt, alcohol. Like, it was quick. It was fast. It was like, you definitely should give up alcohol, Dad. He does not like it. He doesn't like it at all. Now, I don't not enjoy having a glass of wine with a big Italian dinner. That's a challenge to me. But at the same time, the whole point of giving something up is it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be something that makes you better. It's supposed to be something that reminds you that there are more important things in this world. And what you did in that room is you created the accountability where you didn't have to do it alone, but you created a movement. And every time we're moving together, we're better. We're better together like that. And so if we're doing that with our family, I encourage dads listening to this. Moms don't have a problem with this. They see them growing. They see this a lot better than we do. But I will tell you, I left today and there are 3 pairs of shoes, and one's mine, one's my oldest, and one's my youngest. And some days it literally just knocks me like to sit down because I'm like, oh my God, it's almost over. I've almost finished my job to a certain point. You're never finished, but the first part, the first chapter. And so, it's a really powerful thing, but self-awareness is what I feel like you were, iterating there. And it's so powerful. And so many of us aren't. And I haven't been perfect, by the way. I think this is always a good message, especially as we wrap up. Just because we talk about being a better version of ourselves, just because we talk about being better dads, better men, better husbands, we fail every day. There are days I walk in and I'm the less version of myself. There's times where I react instead of respond. I want to be better every day. And as I talk about my brother, I hope my brother has a much better trajectory. And if he's proactive, we learned today that will help him. But than I did in the early years of being a parent. And, so I think those are the things that are so powerful. But looking at the shoes, man, it is so powerful.
Never thought of it that way. And we have like a mud room that, you have to walk through to come through the garage, and it's full of shoes. And that is so true because there's shoes all over my house and they're all of different sizes. And it's very revealing that, my 15-year-old wears a size 12, and I remember like a minute ago, he was like a 5, right? Or I'm reminded because my 7-year-old that's what he's wearing right now. But that's a important reminder. I mean, there's these as fathers and to really, hit this home of like how quickly this time goes and how precious it really is. It's these breadcrumbs that are left behind for us that we see literally on a daily basis. It's right in front of our face, but yet sometimes we just don't notice it until it's pointed out, just like you did today.
Yeah, that's all. It's so powerful, Larry. I'm so grateful we had a chance to have this conversation. I'm grateful that you're putting a great message out. It's not surprising to me that 3 million people find information about asking the better questions and being curious about your children to be interesting, because it is. I'm most sorry that what drove that great video is something that was so horrendous and challenging to your business partner. But I definitely know that impacting other people is a way that you celebrate a life. And I know you're out there doing that with your family and everybody else every day. Larry, how do people find you? What do they do to catch up with you, to join your movement, to be a part of what you're doing out there in the world?
Yeah, number one, I so appreciate you giving me time to do that. We have a lot of different resources on our site just that are free. I don't want a thing from you. There's no catch to any of these. Like literally, just this is a movement, and one of the ways we make a movement, we inspire men, is to just teach them very simple things, right? Or just even if you already know it, just be reminded of it. Or even if you just want more detail of like, hey, what's the psychological impact if I do these things? So like one of them, if you go to the dadedge.com go to the dadedge.com, there's a tab in the nav bar for resources. In there, you'll find like, so I've got a training on 25 intimate conversation starters. So you can like literally just click on that. You'll get a PDF with 25 questions you can literally start using right away with your wife. There's even a video training of the psychology of why intimate conversation starters are the foundation of conversational excellence, right? Really what the training is what we call generative questions. We call them 25 intimate conversation starters because that's what they are. But at the same time, no one understands what that means unless you say it's a intimate conversation starter. Oh, I know what that means. I also have a few other different trainings on there, 21 days to an extraordinary marriage, all those different things. You can download our podcast, The Dad Edge, at anywhere you download podcasts. And then if you want to move from listener into action taker, that's where you can join Dad Edge Alliance, which is our elite brotherhood, our mastermind, where we're helping men elevate their marriages, the connection with their kids, being a better leader within themselves, their family, their community, the whole 9 yards. You can find that at thedadedge.com/alliance. One final thing that I'll say, and just a nugget for men to really think about, is this. Many men don't deem themselves as worthy as investing in themselves of improvement. And I don't care what way you look at an investment. It could be our talent, it can be our money, and it can be our time, right? But think of it this way. The decisions that you decide to make on investing in yourself for growth will pay dividends not only for you, but for the 2 and 3 and 4 generations beyond you. Many men don't deem themselves worthy of like, oh, I'm not worth it. I don't have the time. I don't have the resources or whatever. I want men to think about this bigger and differently. The things that you decide to like, so for instance, if you learn how to be a better communicator within your marriage, well, guess what? Your kids have a front row seat to your marriage and they're watching everything you do. So if you're learning new skills and you know how to connect with your wife and your kids see you do this, well, guess what? That's going to put the odds much more in their favor that they're going to be able to do those things. So you're actually, because you decided to improve yourself and your marriage or your growth or whatever, well, now you're going to see that in your kids and their marriages. And guess where else you're going to see it? Those little grandkids that are come over 20, 30, 40 years from now, whatever it's going to be for you, you're going to see it in them. So the decisions that you decide to make today are going to stick with you and your legacy for generations to come. I kid you not. So for the men listening to this, it's bigger than us. It's bigger than you. This is going to impact you, your family, your marriage for generations to come.
Yeah, it's powerful. Live your legacy. Don't worry about leaving it. Just live it. Is one of the most important, powerful messages someone can have. And that's what you're talking about. And everybody listening, you are right where you're supposed to be. You are right now where you're supposed to be. Today is a new day and it can start now. So knowing it isn't enough. It's time to do it. Make movement, action, apply. And I love the differential between investment and cost. In life, everybody looks at spending money or going out and buying something as a cost. But when it's a true investment, it pays dividends well beyond the initial investment. And so I'm grateful to have you on today. I'm grateful to have shared this conversation. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast and giving us your time.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.